What exactly constitutes a character being called a girlfail? Is it a feeling, a set of attributes? Well, today I want to use what little intelligence I have to come up with a reliable way of identifying a true girlfail. Grab a snack and get comfortable because this one is a doozy. I've noticed a slow but steady rise in the popularity of the idea of a girlfail in recent years. Particularly in anime circles, the celebration of pathetic, useless, and cringe animanga women is very commonplace. Obviously, not everyone is fascinated by these girlfails, but interest certainly seems to be rising. I, too, have a particular fondness for these kinds of characters, and I think relatability is a big component of that. There's something comforting to me about seeing a cute anime girl struggle in social situations and saying, wow, that's so me. However, I feel like the term, although useful in certain cases, has become too broad and lost some meaning. I want girlfail to mean something. I want it to paint a clearer picture. I want to analyze what makes a girlfail and what doesn't. Using the scientific method, I'm going to attempt that in this video. Step 1. In order to compile a list of traits that define what a girlfail is, I'm going to go through all of the anime that I've seen that I believe contain a potential girlfail. Although I haven't seen every anime and manga that includes a pathetic woman, or even most of them, I think my sample size is adequate and includes a lot of popular potential girlfails. This step is simply what us scientists like to call observation. Step 2. Next, I will predict which characters give me the feeling of being a girlfail without consulting the list. This part isn't very scientific, sadly, since it's based purely on my intuition. But if my feelings turn out to have a basis in reality, I can conclude this experiment as a success. Basically, if I can guess a lot of them right before doing the study, then I have created a great set of guidelines. Step 3. After carefully observing the alleged girlfails, I'm going to compile a list of traits. These are the guidelines I will be using to judge the characters that I think are possible girlfails. If the character in question can meet a certain number of criteria from my list, they will pass the inspection and, in my eyes, be considered an official girlfail. Step 4. This is the part where we go through each character and examine them using my list. Like I said, if they meet the required number of traits, they pass and become an official girlfail. This requirement is set to at least 2.5 points. Half points can be awarded at my discretion. Step 5. Finally, we analyze our data and understand why some characters didn't make the cut and why some did. Through this, we can gain a better understanding of the girlfail phenomenon and why people create labels like this in the first place. In the end, it doesn't matter if a character qualifies as a real girlfail or not, because the comments are going to disagree with me anyways. Please take solace in that. Before we do anything else, I want to start off by sharing with you my carefully curated list of traits that I believe will help us understand who is a girlfail and who isn't. This list was formed after months of studying with my sensei up in the mountains, sitting under waterfalls and meditating. I pored over this list in the dim candlelight, a quill dipped in pure black ink hovering over the page, understanding that each letter I carved could change the course of history as we know it. I promise you, I did not take this job lightly. Here's what I came up with. Pillars of girlfailness. Pathetic. This means that the character is overall weak-willed. They rely a lot on others to take care of them and don't seem to have much agency. They are routinely helpless, lost, and confused, despite being at an age where they should be able to handle difficult situations better. Self-sabotaging. A self-sabotaging character is one that gets in the way of their own goals, due to things like anxiety, self-confidence issues, or other internal struggles. A lot of characters who self-sabotage don't think they deserve good things, and because of that, screw up opportunities for themselves. Awkward/socially inept. This category is pretty self-explanatory. Characters who are awkward or socially inept simply have a hard time communicating with others or connecting with them. This could be for various reasons, for example, low self-confidence. Femcel ideology. So this category is a bit more complicated than the previous ones. What I mean by femcel ideology is that the character is somewhat misogynistic despite being a girl. They think most other girls are shallow, especially the popular ones, and that they are actually superior to the vapid girls around them. Basically, a female incel who blames everyone else for not having friends or being in a relationship, despite having a rotten attitude and showing no real effort to improve. Hopeless romantic. This last one may be divisive, but I believe it to be necessary. In this case, the hopeless romantic character needs to also not be in a relationship, or else it doesn't really work. They want someone to love and take care of them, maybe even ignoring their own issues in the process. They are looking for a knight in shining armor to carry them away from their problems they either yearn for or obsess over another character romantically, despite unreciprocated feelings. Either that, or they fall for anyone really easily. Without further ado, let's begin by introducing the contenders for the official Girlfail title. Drumroll please! Hitori Bocchi Gotou, Yui Hirasawa, Usagi Tsukino, Asa Mitaka, Marcille Donato, Kobeni Higashiyama, Tomoko Kuroki, Toko Fukawa, and Konata Izumi. I am now going to sort this list into who I think makes it and who doesn't, based purely on my intuition. The first section is going to be made up of characters who I already have a strong feeling are girlfails without dissecting them yet. The second section will be made up of characters who I simply don't think have what it takes to be considered a proper girlfail. Let's begin. Also, before we actually start, I want to make it clear that I haven't fully completed all of the series we will be talking about. By that I mean, if the anime has a manga that goes on long after the anime, chances are I haven't read it. There are exceptions, like how I have finished manga like Dungeon Meshi and I keep up weekly with Chainsaw Man, but I will always be clear about what content I have and haven't seen, and therefore why I make the analyses that I do, despite the character maybe changing later in the series. Starting off strong, we will first look at Bocchi. Bocchi is from the anime Bocchi the Rock, a show about a talented guitarist with severe social anxiety, somehow finding herself in a band with other girls and trying to overcome her flaws. I've covered this anime before on the channel, and it's one of my favorite shows of all time. This analysis is only pertaining to the first season of the anime, not the manga, as I have not read it yet. I think Bocchi shows very strong signs of girlfailness, particularly as it pertains to the first three categories, those being pathetic, self-sabotaging, and social ineptitude. Bocchi is unable to talk to people without stammering or mumbling and has an incredibly difficult time keeping eye contact. She has difficulty with even the most baseline social interactions like saying good morning to her classmates. In terms of self-sabotaging, she convinces herself that she's unable to do things, like when she throws away her application for the school festival. The one thing I will say, though, is despite Bocchi sometimes getting in the way of herself, she also does push herself to improve, and that aspect of her character is a strong component of the series. So, when it comes to her falling into the self-sabotaging category, I'd give her a half point. I do think Bocchi is a girlfail, but she has the potential to change, and the series seems to be focused on her character development. She still scored 2.5 points on the girlfail meter, and I think that just barely counts her as one. Congratulations, Bocchi, or sorry? Next up is Yui Hirasawa. Yui is a character I put in the no section because I don't particularly feel like she's a girlfail, but I also understand why people might think she is. So let's talk about it. Yui is from K-On!, which even if you're a newer anime fan, I'd be incredibly surprised if you hadn't heard of. Similar to Bocchi the Rock, it's a show about 4 high school girls in a band, although this band takes place in school rather than outside of it. The main character is Yui, a clumsy, airheaded, somewhat dopey girl who's pretty directionless in life. Feeling like she needs to join a club during high school, she decides to join the light music club after being bribed with sweets, not knowing that she can't just whistle or play the triangle, which is the sort of easy club activity that she wanted. In the end, she's inspired by the other club members when they perform a song for her, and decides to learn guitar so she can play music with them and be a real member of the band. Season 1 of the show focuses on various misadventures surrounding the girls growing closer, as well as Yui learning more about how to play her instrument. Although Yui doesn't struggle with social anxiety, she's extremely friendly. I would label her as somewhat pathetic. Yui relied heavily on her childhood friend Nodoka before meeting her new bandmates, and although she does gain more independence throughout K-On!, she still relies on others a lot. Other than her innate patheticness, I really don't think Yui falls into any of the other Girlfail categories I created, which makes me hesitant to label her as such. I suppose you could say she self-sabotages by just being plain lazy, like how she gets horrible grades since she hates studying, but that's not really a personality flaw in my eyes. She's just lazy and doesn't want to do it. But even if you did count both pathetic and self-sabotaging as qualities she has, I still don't think that's enough for her to meet the requirements. She certainly isn't socially inept, a femcel, or particularly romantic in any way. On the Girlfail meter, I'm placing her at a 1.5, not a Girlfail. Let's talk about Sailor Moon. I am primarily going to be focusing on the 90s anime for this section since that's the version I and many others grew up with. I have not read the manga yet, so take what I say with a grain of salt and feel free to disagree with my take in the comments. This is gonna be a tough one as I know a lot of people consider Usagi a Girlfail, and personally, I really don't. But maybe I'm wrong, so let's take a look at the facts. First of all, Usagi can definitely be labeled as pathetic. She's known to be a crybaby, quite selfish when it comes to trivial things, is very lazy, clumsy, and doesn't do well in school. Even when she first becomes Sailor Moon, she's quite bad at using her powers, relying on others to save her a lot, like Tuxedo Mask in the beginning of the series. However, she does eventually come into her own, becoming an extremely powerful hero as the series progresses. Despite her character development, I will grant you that Usagi acts pretty pathetic through a big chunk of the series, especially when she's in her civilian clothes. Okay, cool, Usagi is pathetic, but are there any other Girlfail points we can give? Well, surprisingly, yes. Despite Usagi not being a social outcast and certainly not a femcel, much like Yui, you might be able to convince me that she self-sabotages simply because of her lazy personality. For that, I will grant half a point. Finally, Usagi definitely fits into the last Girlfail category, being a total hopeless romantic. I did make it clear that this only really works when the character in question is single, and as we all know, Usagi and Mamoru become a couple not too far into the series. However, before that, and even after Usagi has a partner, she still fawns over attractive guys.
My Formula One racing career is hanging on a very thread and you won't help!
Shouldn't you get a driver's license first?
I'll race you. And I'll even give you a head start.
Albeit toned down a bit after she matures somewhat and gets her own boyfriend. Even then, she still fawns over Mamoru after they become a couple, fighting her friends and her future daughter over him.
Oh, I get it now! I knew I could count on you, Mamo! Mamo, this is the part I really don't get. Maybe because it's upside down, silly!
Usagi is a hopeless romantic before and during her relationship. She loves melting over cute guys and fantasizing about romantic scenarios like being swept up in a wedding dress. So, wait, how many points is that? 2? 2.5? Usagi is the same level of Girlfail as Bocchi? Hold on, that can't be... Okay, so despite my initial gut feeling of Usagi not being a Girlfail, I guess she is one? She falls at a 2.5 on the Girlfail meter, meaning Usagi qualifies, and I was wrong. Alright, I gotta get this next one right, or I'll have to retire this whole channel. Let's see. The next one is... Oh. Okay, surely this one will be easy to predict. Spoilers for the Chainsaw Man manga ahead. Skip the next section if you're an anime only, because we're talking about the one, the only Asa Mitaka. Asa is the protagonist of Chainsaw Man Part 2, a normal girl who's killed, subsequently making a deal with the war devil Yoru in exchange for being revived. She has a prickly personality, oftentimes choosing to stay quiet and very socially reserved. When she does talk to people, it's obvious that she has very little social awareness and tends to make others uncomfortable. Asa has a negative outlook on life, other people, and most importantly herself. Let's consult the list. To despite everything I just described, I actually don't believe Asa falls under the pathetic girl fail requirement. As a reminder, here's how I explained the idea of patheticness for the purpose of this analysis. This means that the character is overall weak-willed. They rely a lot on others to take care of them and don't seem to have much agency. They are routinely helpless, lost, and confused, despite being at an age where they should be able to handle difficult situations better. I really don't think this accurately describes Asa. Sure, near the beginning of her introduction, she was helpless when it came to fighting devils and let Yoru take over. You could even argue that she's weak-willed because Yoru seems to be in control of her body more than she is in recent chapters, even though it's hard to say exactly why that's the case. We don't have all the information on how Asa and Yoru swap back and forth and what constitutes it. Despite Asa's self-hatred, she is a very determined character when she feels strongly about something, as well as having strange spikes of confidence in certain areas, like thinking that she's cute. So I really don't feel comfortable labeling her as pathetic, especially when she becomes an extremely proficient devil hunter once she gets used to Yoru's powers. On top of that, because she lost her family, Asa is very independent and self-sufficient. She doesn't rely on anyone. When it comes to the other categories though, I think she falls into them perfectly. She's self-sabotaging, like when she ruins her date with Denji by giving non-stop lectures on sea life despite wanting him to fall for her. She's very awkward and socially inept, unable to form connections with her classmates and getting bullied on top of it. She's the first character in the video so far to fall into the femcel ideology description. Asa holds resentment for everyone around her due to jealousy, like how she despises couples who do PDA and thinks all of her classmates are stupid. In reality, she wishes she could fit in with them, and the hatred she feels towards them is simply her defense mechanism to make up for her own self-hatred. This is made very clear at the end of the Bucky arc. I thought Asa would easily fit into the hopeless romantic category, but sadly, I just don't think that's true. While Asa does have a crush on Denji, she's hardly romantic, and she has way too much on her plate to really properly stew on those feelings. That being said, I'm still willing to give Asa half a point in the category just because of how easily flustered she can get when it comes to romance. All in all, Asa finds herself at a 3.5 on the girl fail meter, the highest score so far. I've redeemed myself after screwing up my Usagi prediction, but the question now is, will anyone take Asa's girl fail crown? Now let's talk about Marcille. The anime adaptation of Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon, exploded in popularity last year when it was released on Netflix. When I saw people buzzing about it on Twitter, I decided to pick up the manga, and I read the whole thing pretty quickly, telling myself I'd watch the anime at a later date. If you don't know, Dungeon Meshi is a series that takes place in a fantasy world similar to something like Dungeons and Dragons. The basic plot we follow for a big portion of the series centers around a party of explorers as they make their way deeper and deeper into a dungeon. With limited resources, these explorers use the creatures and plant life that live in the dungeon as food, with Senshi, a very knowledgeable expert on surviving in the dungeons, helping them make delicious meals out of various monsters. The plot thickens the more you watch/read, and the series becomes very dark at points. It's an excellent manga, and I'm sure the anime is just as good. I'm going to try to keep this analysis as spoiler-free as possible, so even if you haven't watched or read the series, you won't need to skip this section. Now that we have that out of the way, let's actually talk about Marcille and whether or not she can be considered a girl fail. First of all, Marcille is incredibly capable. She's an extremely competent magic user who's able to cast a wide variety of spells with ease. She can cast offensive magic, healing magic, and even utility spells like ones that allow you to walk on water. Marcille is intelligent. She graduated at the top of her class and is overall very book smart. In terms of relying on others, it seems Marcille dislikes being weak in the eyes of her friends and often sets out to prove herself as powerful and capable. All of these facts force me to rule her out as pathetic. Actually, I don't think Marcille fits into the femcel or socially inept categories either, which automatically disqualifies her from being a girl fail in my eyes. Nevertheless, I think it's important to cover the flaws Marcille does have and why they don't make her a girl fail. First of all, Marcille is very high-strung. She likes doing things a particular way and has a hard time stepping out of her comfort zone, which creates conflict between herself and Senshi, who often has to assure Marcille that the monsters they eat are perfectly safe and in fact healthy to consume. Even so, Marcille is quite often horribly disgusted by their meals on a purely aesthetic level, even if she does end up finding them tasty. Basically, Marcille has a hard time changing her way of thinking and seeing from new perspectives, which can cause conflict. Marcille also has deep-seated insecurities that mostly stem from her long life expectancy. She's terrified of losing the people close to her by outliving them, which is sadly an inevitable truth that she has to come to terms with. The only Girlfail category that I think Marcille fits into is self-sabotage. Due to her insecurities, Marcille puts herself and her team into dangerous situations that they otherwise could have avoided. These issues come to a head in the finale arc of the manga, which I will not spoil, but if you know, you know. I think a Girlfail needs to have a certain level of sloppiness to her, which is hard to explain in words. Marcille is very prim and proper, and although she has her faults, none of them really drive home a very Girlfail feeling. She's a woman who screws up sometimes, but who's mostly a very confident, competent, important part of her team. Some Yuri fans may argue that Marcille is a hopeless romantic for Fallen, and while I do love the ship, it simply isn't as canon as I'd like to admit. There can be some romantic subtext gleaned from the two, but overall, in the text, they're played as just very close friends. In the end, Marcille scores only a 1 on the Girlfail meter, the lowest score we've seen so far. Chainsaw Man gets 2 reps in this video, which just goes to show you how insane Fujimoto is. His bread and butter is creating morally bankrupt and or pathetic women, which is why he's the greatest. I will primarily be focusing on the anime in this section, but there will also be minor spoilers. Nothing that really affects anything major though, so watch at your discretion. Anyway, let's talk about Kobeni Higashiyama. Kobeni is a supporting character in Chainsaw Man who works as a public safety devil hunter, an extraordinarily dangerous job that she hates doing. Kobeni, despite her timidness, has been forced to do this job by her parents in order to procure money from her to pay for Kobeni's brother's college fees. Kobeni is often quite useless and tends to cower, cry, and hide away when it comes to any danger. That is, until on the rare occasion she just locks in and decimates her enemies swiftly. Because we don't know what devil Kobeni has a contract with, it's unknown whether her random spikes of lethality are due to her own strength or being borrowed from by a devil. I think Kobeni easily achieves the pathetic award, as although she can sometimes toughen up, 95% of the time she's crying and choking on her snot, relying on everyone else to fight. I think I'll also give her half a point in the socially inept category because she is pretty shy when speaking at the dinner party. Not only that, when she gets trapped with everyone in the hotel, Kobeni threatens, screams, and riles everyone up, making the situation much, much worse, which is definitely social ineptitude in a way. On that same note, I'll throw in self-sabotage as well. Even though she desperately doesn't want to die, Kobeni's idea of self-preservation is very skewed. If she really wanted to live, why not just abandon her family instead of risking her life every day so that they can steal all of her money? Kobeni does not exhibit femcel ideology, nor is she very romantic in any sense. Therefore, Kobeni scores a 2.5, meaning she does, just barely, qualify as a Girlfail. I hope you're seeing how strict I made this list, because I want the Girlfail to mean a specific thing. And you'll see that as we continue on with the video. Tomoko. Tomoko. Where do I even begin? First off, this analysis of her character will only be taken from the anime, not the ongoing manga. I understand that Tomoko has changed considerably in the manga since the beginning of the series, but that's going to be irrelevant in this discussion because I, and many others, have only seen the anime. Tomoko Kuroki is the first character that came to mind when I thought of the idea for this video. She's the main character of Watamote, also known as It's Your Guys' Fault I'm Not Popular, a show about a socially stunted schizoid otaku girl who struggles to have any sort of normal social interactions. The show takes place during her high school life where, despite believing she'll somehow become popular, is hit again and again with the reality that no one really cares about her or notices her. Tomoko is deranged, hateful, perverted, and overall not a very good person. Despite that, we love her anyway, or at least I do. I'm very comfortable labeling her as pathetic for a multitude of reasons. Tomoko relies on her younger brother, Tomoki, way too much for an older sister. She forces him to talk to her for 1 hour a day in order to get better at socializing, despite how much he hates it. And when Tomoki initially refused this request, Tomoko said that she'll kill herself.
わかった。自殺する。
So he eventually relented. Tomoko is the queen of self-sabotage due to her warped ideas of human interaction. She frequently makes situations worse for herself that she's trying to get out of, which is where a lot of the show's comedic elements come into play. For example, when Tomoko notices some of her classmates at the McDonald's she's at and doesn't want them to notice her, she dresses herself up in a makeshift disguise which is so horrifically ugly that she ends up drawing more attention to herself than she would have otherwise. It goes without saying that Tomoko is completely socially inept. She struggles to greet people, and it's basically impossible for her to hold any semblance of a conversation with a stranger. When she does talk, it's typically in a mumbly, whispery voice that can be difficult for others to hear. She doesn't understand how to properly behave in a social setting and frequently embarrasses herself because of it. Even more than Asa, Tomoko strictly follows the femcel ideology. She hates her fellow classmates and usually targets the girls more often with her vitriol, calling them sluts, whores, and bimbos, all in her head, of course.
これからカラオケ行くんだけど、お前らも来ね。
行くうるせえな、チャラ男バカ女どもが。月何回カラオケ行ってんだよ。どうせ。
よーし、俺 AK って歌っちゃうぞ。
とか言ってんだろ。さらに密室をいいことにエロいことばっかして。
She often thinks of herself as better and more interesting than the normies around her, causing her to curl up tighter and tighter into a ball of isolation. Lastly, despite being such a hateful person, I even think Tomoko falls into the hopeless romantic category. She often gets completely flustered by any boy talking to her, particularly ones she thinks are hot, and she lusts over video game men, obsessively playing otome games. Tomoko even spends her time listening to yandere boyfriend audios, fantasizing about having someone be so protective of her. Tomoko Kuroki passes the Girlfail test with flying colors, getting a perfect score on each requirement, which is even more than I initially expected. Tomoko is the pinnacle of Girlfails, the blueprint, and every single Girlfail after her shall be judged by how similar they are to Tomoko. She scored a perfect 5 on the Girlfail meter. God help her soul. Have you ever been in this situation? Oh man, I sure wish I could watch more Mimiori videos, but the ones on her channel aren't enough. Or even, boy, I have so much extra money lying around, I sure do wish I could give a little bit of it a month to a weird blue swirly glasses freak so that she can continue making epic content about my favorite Japanese animes. If so, I have the perfect deal for you. At the lowest tier of the Mimiori Patreon, $3 per month. I know you can scrounge around in your couch for that change. You get all Mimiori videos at least a week before they premiere on YouTube. Plus, your name will appear at the end of all my future videos. Not only that, if a YouTube video gets taken down by Aniplex, I will upload it to Patreon as well. Like this Monica video that totally didn't get me 500 million hate comments. Plus, you get access to my private Discord server. Ooh, we play Mudai in it. Ooh! If you're extra generous and can spare $10 or more a month, I make custom stickers and send them out to you, like these. And even if you don't want to commit, just like my ex-wife, you don't have to. You can simply make a one-time purchase of my early videos for $3, no strings attached. So please check out my Patreon and join as a free member. That way, if I release a video that looks particularly interesting, you can buy it in the future to support me. If you can't afford to join my Patreon as a paid member, the best way to support me is liking this video and subscribing here on YouTube. Okay, back to the video. Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc is a murder mystery adventure game that's also mostly a visual novel and during the trials becomes somewhat of a shooter. If this is your first time hearing about Danganronpa, I do really recommend the games, as all 3 mainline titles are pretty interesting and fun in my opinion. The quick synopsis is that a class of high school students who are geniuses in different fields of work/study are trapped inside of a school, with the ringleader of the operation, Monokuma, orchestrating various ways of making them kill each other with the promise that if you can do it without being caught, you get to be released. After each murder, there are trials, and the gameplay involves finding clues, putting information together, and shooting down words of your classmates that contradict so that you can find the truth of what really happened. The game also got adapted into an anime, which is why I'm including it in the running. The anime is not great, so if you want to experience the story of Danganronpa, just play the games. Although I will say the dub of the Danganronpa anime can be pretty hilariously cringe sometimes.
This sauna is amazeballs!
Today, we will be talking about Toko Fukawa from the first game, Trigger Happy Havoc. She's very intelligent and has written countless novels, with many of them receiving awards. Her most famous story, So Lingers the Ocean, is a romance novel. Much like Tomoko, Toko tends to be rude, depressed, and very distrustful of others. Apparently in childhood, she was bullied quite heavily, resulting in her believing that everyone around her is out to get her. She also has a strong fear of blood and the dark, seemingly due to past trauma. Toko often speaks exactly what's on her mind without a filter, and during the killing game often accuses others before she knows enough information. She victimizes herself and can't handle when the rudeness she exhibits is brought back onto her. It's hard to say if I necessarily want to label her as pathetic. While yes, she can come off as useless and annoying, my guidelines for the pathetic category have more to do with being helpless and reliant on others. Toko, due to her distrustfulness, spends pretty much all of her time alone and doesn't tend to rely on others to take care of her. Despite Toko's intelligence, she sometimes self-sabotages by accusing others without evidence, making her look suspicious. Also, during one of the murder cases, spoilers, so skip ahead if you don't want that, Toko tampers with evidence when Yasuhiro tries to frame her for Sakura's murder by writing down Toko's name on a magazine that, in an attempt to hide it, Toko puts back upside down. It might have looked better for her if she hadn't tried to hide the evidence pointing towards herself. I'm only talking about Toko here, not her alter ego. Toko herself isn't a violent person, it's seemingly all relegated to her alternate personality. As for being socially awkward, I think Toko fits the bill. She can't speak without stammering and assumes everyone thinks she's ugly and annoying.
Sorry, but I don't think so.
Why do you say that? Is it because you think I'm ugly?
According to the Danganronpa wiki, she either never learned or never bothered to learn social skills. Again, similar to Tomoko, Toko exemplifies being a femcel. Despite her apparent lack of self-confidence, she still routinely insults everyone around her and appears to believe she's smarter and more capable than everyone else. She often reduces the people around her into one-dimensional tropes, like how she constantly insults Aoi by calling her things like sports idiot, stupid swimmer, and a brainless mermaid.
What if the idiot swimmer girl and Makoto are in on it together and lying to protect each other?
Idiot swimmer girl?
Finally, Toko is the clearest example so far of a hopeless romantic, with how she treats Byakuya, another classmate. She falls in love with Byakuya pretty soon after the killing game begins, swooning after him at every chance she gets, and even goes so far as to masochistically call him master. He, on the other hand, is indifferent towards her and actually seems to dislike her since she gives him so much unwanted attention and follows him around. Despite that, he also takes advantage of her devotion and orders her to complete tasks for him, which she does so without a second thought. She has a 0% chance of actually starting a relationship with Byakuya, but even still, pathetically tries to get his attention constantly. Toko earns herself a whopping score of 4 points on the Girlfail meter, coming in right under Tomoko. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. In no universe is Konata from Lucky Star a Girlfail. But for the purposes of this video, I want to take you through why she isn't, because on a surface level, she seems like the kind of character that would be. Konata Izumi is one of the main characters in a slice-of-life anime from 2007 called Lucky Star. The show follows the 4 main girls through their high school life and their various antics. Konata can be considered the clown of the group, as she likes cracking jokes and teasing her friends, especially Kagami, since they have the classic silly versus straight man dynamic.
髪型とかリボンとか合わせると案外似てるかもね。コナちゃんダメだ、鏡に可愛い毛は無理。うっさいな、勝手に想像して失礼なこと言うな。
Konata is an otaku. She loves anime, manga, and video games, and isn't afraid to make it known. Her room is full of anime posters and figures, particularly of Haruhi Suzumiya, an anime she seems to be fond of. Konata, while being intelligent, is also very lazy, so she rarely studies and prefers to copy her friends' homework. She never studies for tests and instead pulls all-nighters, so she can get good enough grades to not fail. Apparently, Konata is athletic, but purposely doesn't join any sports or clubs because it would take away from her anime watching and gaming time. On top of all of that, Konata is well known in the otaku community by her pen name, Legendary Girl A, and her opinions on anime and manga are highly influential in the sphere.
No way, it's her, the legendary girl A!
Relax! She'll think something's up if you start freaking out.
Right, you're right, I know, but I heard that whenever she comes here and buys stuff, whoever she buys from, their books suddenly get popular. How can I not be excited about her?
As you can see, although Konata is an otaku, she is by no means a loser. She isn't pathetic, she doesn't have low self-esteem. The only way she sabotages herself is by not studying properly, but it's really not sabotage if she just doesn't care. Konata is very friendly and sociable, not only with her immediate friend group, but also her classmates. She's basically a Chad. On that same note, she doesn't in any way subscribe to the femcel ideology, nor is she boy crazy or really romantically interested in anyone. She loves moe, so she frequently compliments her friends for being cute, especially Miyuki, but it's hardly romantic. Konata, despite being an otaku who doesn't do well in school, is a perfectly adjusted member of society. She even has a part-time job at a maid cafe. Can you imagine some of the other characters in this video holding down a job? No, I don't think so. On the girl fail meter, Konata scores a 0. She's a girl, but doesn't fail at anything. Konata is the antithesis to the girl fail, and what every other girl fail should strive to be. Even you, watching this, should strive to be more like Konata. She's the best. So that's it, right? We've covered 9 girl fail contenders and went over which ones qualified and which ones didn't. I hope this video was somewhat educational or useful or interesting in any way. Girl fail is still a relatively new term, so I hope this video can be a resource for people wanting to understand exactly what it means. I think my guidelines ended up working pretty well, since the only one I guessed wrong was Usagi. Either way, if you disagreed with anything in this video, make sure to leave a comment as to why. If you made it this far into the video and don't know what to comment, write, "My mom is a girl fail," so I know you watched it until the end. I really appreciate all my new subscribers, welcome to the channel, and remember, if you enjoyed your time here, leave a like so I can keep making videos like this. Well, probably not exactly like this, but still. Anyway, what? Zuzu, you want to tell me something? I forgot to mention a girl fail? Oh, fuck off!